Welcome back, everybody. This is Minister Q. Welcome to the protocol. And this is part 2 of Has the Recession Begun? Now, in this video, I think it's pretty good because it's going to give you an idea of not just us as common people feeling the brunt of what we felt with this recession. We know we have these high food prices, clothing items, devices, just the prices starting to kind of go up, right? Your budget is looking a little different now because you want to be more careful about how you spend it. But anyway, in July, the Federal Reserve staff announced that they were no longer forecasting a recession in 2024, marking a sharp departure from earlier projections. While the Fed staff continued to share a brighter outlook, the yield curve spread between 10-year and 3-month Treasury rates suggests there is a 61% change of a recession in the 12 months ahead. Historically, the yield curve has been a reliable predictor of recessions, based on a New York Fed model which uses data from 1959 to 2009. Meanwhile, a survey of economists by Walters Clower shows that they're split, with 48% calling for a recession over the next 12 months. Well, at least, whatever. Across Main Street, consumers share a more cautious sentiment, with over 69% saying that a recession is likely in the next year based on a Conference Board survey. Yet, corners of America's C-suite have grown more positive. Goldman Sachs recently dropped its recession forecast to a 15% likelihood, while Bank of America gives it a 35 to 40% odds. On the other hand, 84% of CEOs are preparing. Come on now. 84% of CEOs are preparing for a recession in the next 12 to 18 months. A drop from 92% seen in the second quarter of 2023. That is more telling to me, you guys, of relying on the banks telling us different. I want y'all guys to see this video. We're not the only ones.
So that
feeling this.
recession everyone was worried about earlier this year,
We're in a scenario where we have a stagflationary environment. I think the economy is going to cool off. I think we'll have a recession by the end of this year or the beginning of next year, and we'll still have rising food prices and rising energy prices. And unfortunately, the Fed's monetary policy just can't change that.
I think the market has been pricing a recession since the beginning of the year.
and then began worrying about it again.
But our base case is that the U.S. economy will go into recession by the middle of next year.
Turns out that recession everyone was worried about has finally arrived, but right now it's only for America's rich. Sticky inflation and a weakened stock market continue to disproportionately pressure wealthy Americans as more and more high-income earners file unemployment claims, according to Bank of America's August 2023 Consumer Checkpoint Survey.
The biggest engine for wealth creation in the world, the driver of wealth, is the stock market. It is also the driver of wealth destruction.
So why should we care about this so-called recession? Because of something called the wealth effect. That's when the declining value of financial assets leads to a decline in consumption. And since the U.S. economy relies on consumer activity for most of its growth, fewer people buying fewer things can lead to a stagnant economy. Here's why the long-awaited recession has arrived for America's rich and why it matters for everyone else.
Before the next one play, y'all might be thinking to yourselves, well, everybody got to feel it. Maybe you're not thinking that, but they call this a rich session. Spending is very important, just as much as you may think saving is. But you can't save too long. You have to spend. It's just the way it is. We have to produce. We can't just be consumers. But here you have the rich, the CEOs, who also feel it. But I want y'all to hear the rest of this, and then I'm going to share some things, because putting all this in perspective is very key.
2022 was a year where the stock market was down very sharply, and we started to see home prices turn south, particularly in some of those hot markets where tech jobs, had helped drive those prices up. As the tech sector cooled, you started to see prices fall. So that had a pronounced impact on the net worth of a lot of households in 2022. Some of that has come back in 2023 as markets have rebounded, not quite to the record levels seen at the beginning of 2022, but a hearty rebound nonetheless.
2023 saw a slight bull rally during the summer, despite rate hikes, thanks to a strong and resilient consumer.
A lot of the hurdles that were in place in January are still in place right now. It's not as if we've seen some sort of super positive reinforcement of like, this is why we can get rid of that sort of uncertainty and replace it with certainty.
Regardless of the country's economic standing, many Americans are feeling the pain of inflation and the cost of revenge spending, as even the wealthy are exhausting their savings and are leaning on credit cards to remain afloat in a tough economy.
Even they are relying on credit cards in a tough economy. The apples don't fall far from the tree. We do it too, right? We borrow that we may spend. There's always a domino effect of all of this, you guys. Those at the top, those at the very top have a way of borrowing and not properly paying back. And then you have the saying, robbing Peter to pay Paul. A lot of that happens. And here you have those who are rich saying, look, we need to figure out a way to preserve ourselves. If we could just borrow more. And truth is, you guys, if we're not in a position of producing more than we are borrowing, inflation will continue to skyrocket. And that's not good.
Companies' recession fears have stonewalled the white-collar job market. Listings compared from a year ago today show a nearly 40% drop in banking and finance jobs and a 50% drop in tech roles.
Thousands more are being laid off in the tech sector. Microsoft is cutting 10,000 jobs, and Google's parent, Alphabet, is reducing its headcount by 12,000 jobs. That follows other hefty job cut announcements from Amazon and Salesforce earlier this month.
The headline here is that any bank not led by Jamie Dimon has been cutting jobs this year. If you look at the big six banks who've all reported, Wells Fargo is the biggest sort of perpetrator here. They've cut about 11,000 jobs, or about 5% of their workforce, just this year alone. And you look at another one, and that's, apart from Wells Fargo, there's also Goldman Sachs. And both of these institutions have had these, businesses that are hit into the wall of high interest rates.
UBS's 2023 Global Wealth Report found that America lost 1.8 million millionaires in 2022. The main culprit? A weak stock market. The S&P 500 dropped by 19% that year. For a current post on how the wealthy are holding up, Bank of America released its August 2023 Consumer Checkpoint Survey. It found that high-income households have a weaker economic confidence and are more cautious on spending due to factors like soft wage growth and job creation for high earners, which may be tied to the rise in unemployment claims from the group.
There are some higher income households that their budgets are significantly stretched. They have leaned against credit to kind of bridge that gap. Household debt has gone up, in particular credit card debt.
Credit card debt has swelled to more than $1 trillion. Despite higher income households buying more discretionary items, this still points to another headwind for the wealthy.
When millionaires look at their risks right now, they mainly see the stock market because that's the source of their wealth.
Despite rallying in summer 2023, the stock market is now getting hit by surging bond yields and the prospect of higher interest rates for longer.
Some people say we could have a weak stock market for a long time because interest rates are so high. That would mean that there's not going to be much wealth creation, may not be much wealth destruction, but unless you're adding wealth, unless you're growing millionaires, all those companies that survive based on rich people spending, whether it's luxury real estate, whether it's luxury fashion, whether it's boats, cars, planes, all those companies are going to see slower growth because they're all driven by the stock market. And it all depends what happens with that stock market in the next year.
And you see how the domino effect take place, you guys? My question to you all is, how many of you have been buying high-end items? How often have you been buying high-end items now like you have before? Or have you been cutting back? I'm curious. If you can go in the comment section, answer that question for me. Are you still buying high-end items? Also, what will your holiday season look like this year? Will you buy high-end items this winter, this Christmas? Are you going to be more cautious with what you purchase? This is one of the most economic driven times, but from the looks of it, I would say that it's not a smart idea. And of course, you want to be able to show value in what you purchase people for the holiday. I get it, but what will your holiday season look like? I'm curious to know. If you can, put it in the comment section.
The second quarter for all the luxury companies saw something we hadn't seen at least since pre-pandemic, which was a decline in US sales. Not just slower growth, but an actual decline. LVMH, which is the giant, they always succeed, they actually reported a surprise 1% drop in US sales. No one expected that. That followed Richemont, which owns Cartier, lots of other brands, reporting a 4% drop in the US. So the top 20% of Americans by income account for over half the spending. I mean, we sort of know this, that the wealthy, those with the most money, spend the most. And they have, throughout the past 30 years, helped an economy where the middle class has lost ground.
The stickiness of inflation has even millionaires cutting back on spending for fine dining, luxury vehicles, and charitable donations.
What? The wealthy cut back on spending due to higher inflation. Shouldn't we be following their example? Wow. They not doing expensive dining. They not caring to drive people around in fancy cars. Come on now. This ain't the time to be showing off.
Investors are dealing with two things, which is market uncertainty and low visibility. And by market uncertainty, what I mean is that because of market uncertainty for investors, it makes it difficult to invest because they don't know sort of where things are going, and that leads to low visibility.
Consumer spending is a huge driver of economic activity. So when the wealthy stop spending, it can slow the whole country's economic recovery.
They have to keep spending to keep the economy going, to keep the consumer economy going, to keep consumer companies profitable.
Around the world, though, the rich are expected to get richer. According to UBS's report projections, global wealth will rise by 38% over the next 5 years, reaching $629 trillion by 2027. And the number of millionaires is estimated to grow to 86 million, up from the 59 million in 2022. And a recession in the US, along with a potentially underperforming stock market, could create the right conditions for America's rich to bounce right back.
The wealthy right now, the mood is very grim because they see high inflation being very sticky and high interest rates sticking around for a long time, which means their stuff, their assets, are going to be worth less.
Worth households, they tend to have a larger percentage of their portfolio in cash. And a lot of that's just around wealth preservation. What you're going to see is more high net worth investors putting money into safe haven investments and just really biding their time. If the economy does slump, if we do end up in a recession, that those investors now have the dry powder to be able to buy other assets at distressed prices. There's an old expression that a recession is like a garage sale for the wealthy.
It's like a garage sale for the wealthy. This is my advice to you guys. Don't give up your real estate. Don't give up your real estate, y'all. Please Talk to your financial advisors. This is not a time to give up your real estate. It's not wise because it will become a gold mine for the super rich. This is where the whole monopoly comes in. They take a pension, we take a cut, literally. People being cut from their jobs. They can survive a storm. You can too, which is where wisdom comes in. They can survive the storm, but it'll be like a garage sale for them to buy up what you lose or what you give up. There are those of you who have businesses that have suffered, just like those during a pandemic. But here we are now with this ripple effect or tsunami starting to come, the tsunami wave that's starting to brew up, where you have to use wisdom and see what is valuable. Your real estate is valuable. Hold on to your real estate. Weather the storm with wisdom.
That's the time where a lot of wealthy investors buy assets at distressed prices that can then ultimately grow their wealth over time as they rebound.
Wow. And it always happened that way. Every time you look at a recession happening, trace the money. Every time a recession happens, to whatever extent, look back in the past and see how there were, I think they said this last year, not just us common citizens or low class, middle class, high class, it doesn't matter. 1.8 million, I think during last year, 1.8 million millionaires no longer were millionaires. There were many of those who have businesses, small businesses, lost their business. But who do you think comes in and buys up all of that? Or buys the real estate, there's a monopoly going on, you guys. There's a monopoly going on. I want to show you this though. This is something I came across. I was watching the video, but I really thought this was interesting. Let me bring this up. There's a way to weather the storms, you guys. You don't have to worry to the point of it affecting your health, but you do need to be alert. That's one thing for sure. You have to be alert. But look at this. Will the U.S. get hit with a recession in 2024? From this month going into 2024, many significant individuals, economists, and even CEOs are looking forward to a recession. As we look at the projections right here, 2024 projections, what's next for the U.S. economy? Despite slowing growth, Federal Reserve staff are no longer forecasting a recession due to the economy's resilience. But the truth is, or the question is, has it really been resilient? Has it been resilient enough? Now, of course, the Federal Reserve is going to say that. Of course, those working for the Federal Reserve are going to say that. Who thinks a recession is coming? Now, watch this. Estimated U.S. recession probability in the next 12 months. Look at this. Bull case consumer spending, which accounts for 70% of U.S. GDP, that's gross domestic production, is underscoring economic optimism. Why is that? Though, again, the Fed says, there's a 0% chance that there's going to be this recession. The yield curve, if anybody don't know about the yield curve, watch as many videos as you can about the yield curve. Study all the articles that you can about a yield curve. But when there's an inversion of a yield curve, yield curves have a way of predicting a recession right around the corner, as it has in times past. The yield curve here, they're saying there's a 61% chance of a recession. Okay. Economists, I don't know what 48% of these individuals or who are these look, they say 48% chance. Now, this is interesting because again, economists that's willing to go behind and see the black markets and really dig deeper, those who are bold enough to really assess the situation and show that, nah, man, there's a recession coming. I respect them. But we're gonna go with the chart for now. 48% says, no, not 48% of them, but they say there's a 48% chance for a recession. Here we are, the consumers. It's amazing to me that we all say, nah, there's a 69% chance of a recession. There's always the people that's feeling the brunt of things that seem to have more truth in our telling of what we feel is coming. Of course, some of the big banks, two in particular, Goldman Sachs say 15% chance. Bank of America says 35 to 40% chance. Can't really trust them too anyway. Anyway, but this is what's interesting. CEOs say 84% chance. 84% chance. What do they know that the rest of us do not know? What are they seeing that we are not? Can we really trust individuals in the position of power who seem to disappoint us time and time again? It is very, very, very concerning and alarming. And I hope that we get back to a place of understanding where our security truly comes from. Now, if you have been listening to different investors, you will hear oftentimes, at least those who are honest enough to share what assets are they really putting their money into to weather the storm. And you guys, one of those assets is gold. It shouldn't be a part of your whole portfolio, but you do want to invest in some gold. I still believe in speaking the facts that all throughout history, you guys, having some gold is a very, very, very solid asset to have. And then you also want to own land. Own land. Trust that owning land will benefit you. I would even suggest you guys to get into gardening. Get back into a position of being able to plant seeds. And that's across the board. That's across the board. That means being a giver also. Learn how to give. God blesses those who give. You heard earlier in the video how it said that many of these major rich people even stopped giving to charity. Y'all, when you get to a point where you stop caring about giving, that's why we find ourselves in a position that we find ourselves in. Just imagine if the world gave more. Imagine if the richest people didn't care so much about prestige and being praised and glorified and looked at as kings and queens of the world. There was this heart that just wanted to share. A heart of sharing and caring. We wouldn't be up here talking about no recession. Everybody will have something. Everybody will have a decent livelihood. But no, there's always going to be those who love envy. And as the saying goes, Absolute power corrupts absolutely. If I could squeeze in here something, because I was talking to you guys earlier about cutting, about how the recession, they're going to feel a pinch. They might even feel a dent. But there are those of us who feel the cut. So let me play this video real quick.
Well, imagine getting a call from your boss saying that your current job title has been eliminated. So you're not getting fired, though. That you're just getting reassigned to a new role.
Well, that's not so bad, right?
Right?
It's happening to many employees, too, apparently across the country. According to a new Wall Street Journal report, layoffs are down, but employers are still finding ways to cut out jobs.
Companies like Adidas, Adobe, IBM, and Salesforce are doing more quiet cutting. They're reassigning employees as part of corporate restructuring. According to financial research platform AlphaSense, reassignments more than tripled over the last year. And the author of that piece is Ray Smith. He is a careers reporter with the Journal, and he's joining us now.
This type of cutting is not a bad thing. If those of you who are CEOs, or if you were a CEO with staff under you, it's wise to reassign, especially if you got good workers. You got to do what you got to do to preserve the company, you know?
Hey, good to see you. I thought this article was so fascinating, but it's also like, it just, every fear that you have as an employee, you know, when you start to wonder if something is going on around you, like this nails it. Except for probably a lot of people too who are still working remotely, so there's nobody to even talk to,
exactly.
you know, to get a sense of what's happening. So first off, let's just get the basics. Can you explain why companies are doing this? But you know what, before you, I want you to give us more of an example of what we're talking about. Like, what are some of the examples of employees that you spoke to that found themselves being quiet cut, I guess?
Sure. They actually recounted getting that phone call or an email from a manager basically telling them your job has been reassigned and you will be doing this from now on, and basically take it or leave it. And so employees I talked to had a range of emotions when they got those memos. They were either, relieved that they still had a job, but on the other side, they were angry and confused, and they felt like the new job they had was either, lower status or lower pay or more responsibilities or something that they didn't even have experience in. And so they were really angry at the companies about this. So it was a range of emotions. One worker I spoke to told me that it actually took a toll on his mental health. So it's a range of emotions.
Yeah, like you gave an example of a guy who was in like management, and then suddenly they were like, well, you're in sales in this area that you know nothing about. Go ahead.
See, that's, initially, if you just kind of read the headline of it, you're like, okay, corporate restructuring,
right?
Like companies saving money, like you still get to keep a job, you still have your health benefits,
Right,
potentially you still have your 401k, hopefully, doesn't sound so bad, but as you're saying, this could be really awful for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And if you think about just people, how their identity is sort of tied up with their titles and the work that they do. And if you're suddenly being told, do something else, especially if it's a demotion or sort of lower pay, lower skilled, and then you have on top of that more responsibilities, it sort of sends you spiraling and wondering, what is the message that the company is sending to me, or what are they trying to tell me? Are they really trying to get me to leave or force me into this job that they know I'll be so miserable in that I'll eventually quit?
So then why are companies doing it? Is it kind of a low-key way of downsizing?
That's a really good question. No company will say this is why we're doing it, like we're quietly cutting people. But the bottom line is that it is sort of a reduction in workforce, almost in a passive aggressive way, sort of like pushing you in this corner and saying, if you don't take it, you have to leave. And the bottom line is that if somebody who refuses a reassignment or eventually leaves after not liking the reassignment, once they leave, the company doesn't have to pay thousands of dollars in severance costs. So it actually saves them in cost.
That's infuriating to me in some ways, to be clear is to be kind. Like just tell me what I need to know. If I need to go look for something else. And the severance thing can be a really big turning point for a lot of people to get them
Yeah.
over the hump. So,
Yeah.
you know, you're forcing people to do something that isn't necessarily good for anybody. I do think it's kind of interesting, and I've really wrestled with making sense of the economy the last few years. But a year ago, U.S. resignations set a record. We saw companies rolling out new titles, raises, you know, you can work from home, just to keep employees from walking out the door. Now we're talking about this. What's changed?
That's a really good question. What's changed is that while the job market is still relatively strong, it's not as strong as a year ago. And so what that means is that if you leave your job, whereas last year you might have been able to find a new one in days or a week, now it's taking much longer to find a new job. So the job market just isn't as strong as it was a year ago. So that's the key difference.
Okay. Well, Ray Smith, thanks for breaking that down for us.
I know.
I hope none of us get reassigned
I know.
today.
I'm like, don't open that email. What if you just
And this is from a month ago. This information is from a month ago. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because many of you can relate. You've been experiencing this. And that article I read earlier, how long ago was this article? Oh, that was this month. Yeah, that was this month. The 3rd of this month. So I want to share with you guys the importance of having faith, having hope beyond what is happening in this world system of things. There are those of you had to cut back. There are those of you, if you are viewing this, may even be in transition of some things you had to let go. Things you had to let go. But you're still breathing. You still got some food. Maybe having certain food has been tight also. But I want you to understand that we all go through trials and tribulations, and that in a fallen world, when I say fallen, for those of you who don't know, yours, ours, our forefather and mother, Adam and Eve, was tempted by a cunning serpent, salesman. They call it oil snake salesman. And because they had not taken heed to the instructions that God gave them, the Most High, the creator of all things, their nature was changed as a result of disobedience to the instructions that their father gave them, our father. And that nature, that sin nature, fell upon all mankind. But God had a plan in place. He had a plan that through time and time again, when he tried to use man to deliver the message to people, to turn back to him for that healing, for them to have an understanding of life and what it truly means to succeed and be happy, there was this constant rebellion against the truth. So then God finally decided to himself, let me send my only begotten son, who fully has my spirit in him, so that when people see him, they see me. And then he was set in order, again, man having an opportunity, a chance to find the answer. Jesus Christ was the way, the truth, and the life. He was the answer. And he was the only one who can atone for our sins, so that we can receive God's spirit in us that regenerates us. So that in that covenant with God, he takes care of his children. Satan is still out here using people who are greedy, selfish, lustful, violent, psychotic, every inhumane thing we could think about. When we think about people starving, when we think about those who have so many resources that they are unwilling to share, when we think about many of these atrocious acts, it's because mankind, for the most part, are not listening to God. All they care about is their own lust, own wants, and their own selfish ways. But if you truly understand the gospel that Jesus Christ preached, and you receive the words that he's spoken, then when you understand what it truly means to find happiness, peace, and assurance for the future, not only on this earth, but also on the new heaven and earth that's coming. And then you coming into that covenant, what you find is God entrusting you with resources. He entrusts you with his property because he owns everything, whether it be money, whether it be land that you own, if it has rich minerals in that land or some livestock or stock that you have, it doesn't matter. It will become an entrustment from God so that you can have that heart of compassion and love and care that he gives you as his child to help people out here who are suffering. This is the purpose and the results of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So with this recession that's coming, I encourage you all, please, by any means necessary, get right with your Creator. Get right with our Creator, the Most High God, who gave us, our ancestors, his name, or a name to call him by. For those of you who don't quite understand me saying it that way, email me. Yahweh, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. If you understand him in his Hebraic name, who also sent his only begotten son, Jesus Christ, when you understand the covenant and you receive the covenant, he will take care of you as his son and daughter. He will heal you where you need to be healed emotionally. He will heal your mind. He will save your soul. Okay? Doesn't mean there won't be trials and tribulations, lessons learned through temptations, pain, sufferings. Those things are going to happen. But my wisdom is this: why suffer without God and lose all of what you have for eternity when you can suffer with him on your side and have the promise of all the things that he has given? And I say has because this promise is eternal and you don't lose anything. The truth is, we can't do this without God. There's no way. There's no surviving this life without him. So with that being said, hopefully you will grow in the truth so that you can weather the storm that's coming. Hit the like and subscribe button. If you're okay with the content that I've shared with you, there's more that I could share. This is not just always about serious matters, but I do want to make sure that I add value to your life with information that is shared and that I comment on as I do these reactions. And maybe I'm going to be getting back into more teachings too, just absolute teachings on scripture and things that will encourage you and give you understanding. But when I think about the time we're in, sometimes people just can't relate unless you can pull out information or comment on information that everybody has their eye on or been hearing through the grapevine. Understand how economics work, y'all. Understand macroeconomics the best way you can, okay? But with that being said, God bless you. And remember to follow the protocol.